CNN's resident smug MAGA Republican stooge, Scott Jennings, is a glutton for punishment. He appeared once again on a CNN panel, desperately trying to defend Donald Trump's sweeping authoritarianism and disregard for rule of law, but was subject to one of the most brutal fact checks I have ever seen, and I can't wait to show it to you. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, Scott Jennings, again, is probably the most insufferable MAGA stooge in all of legacy media, and that includes anybody on Fox News. And he is regularly humiliated by his fellow co-panelists, people like Catherine Rampell and others. In this case, though, he received a brutal fact check, again, perhaps the single most humiliating one he's ever experienced, at the hands of both the host, Abby Phillip, and one of his co-panelists, Bakari Sellers. So we're going to play the clip and unpack it together.
Going to enforce the determination.
Here's what I think is a joke. That you have these partisan hack Democrat attorney generals, they get together, and the only thing they know how to do is try to nullify the results of the last election by venue shopping these district court judges. They find the most lunatic liberals they can. They file lawsuits knowing full well they're going to try to usurp the president's authority, tie this up in court for years. Donald, I hope you're happy.
Lunatic liberal judges like a George W. Bush appointee, like a Ronald Reagan appointee, like a Donald Trump appointee, like another Ronald Reagan appointee, like another George W. Bush appointee.
But to finish my point,
all of those lunatic liberal Republican appointees.
Yeah, and look what the Republicans do all the time.
I hope you are happy with Donald Trump today, because you wanted last night, more than anything, for him to say he'll abide by the courts and go through the appeals process. I hope you're happy.
That's literally the very first thing that I said.
I'm a little unhappy,
listen,
but I hope you're happy.
Donald Trump, listen, hold on, let me just make this very plain. Donald Trump is right.
Hey!
You appeal, you take it to the courts, you appeal the decision. Maybe you're mad about it. You're mad because it slows the process down, but you abide by the court decision, and Scott, you should listen to Donald Trump.
This is what they tried before, tying him up against the will of the election.
There are a couple of points I want to make, two points. The first is, the bar is in hell for Donald Trump. The bar of expectation we have for the president of the United States is in hell, because all he did today was simply state that he was going to follow the rule of law, something that we should expect from everybody who puts their hand on it.
Scott said that he shouldn't.
But I'm just telling everyone who is championing and cheering the fact that he said I'm not going full Andrew Jackson should understand that this is something that everyone should do, Democrat or Republican, who's an elected official in this country. That's one. Two, the fact that Scott and Elon Musk today just want to just set aside the rule of law or bastardize these. As you went down the list, I was going to go down the list, but these individuals who were appointed by Reagan, by Bush,
how about the guy in New York?
But I'm not done yet.
Why do you leave him out?
But that's 2 of 12. Okay. I'm not done yet. The other thing is, you accuse all of these individuals, these attorney generals like Aaron Ford, right? You accuse the attorney general like not Josh Stein, but Jeff Jackson in North Carolina, who are actually fighting for their constituents. But I didn't hear you say those things when the Mississippi Attorney General, Alan Wilson in South Carolina, were doing everything they can to stop things like student loan forgiveness, et cetera, day in and day out when Joe Biden was president of the United States. And what they're doing, making sure that, we know if Elon Musk has access to your personal information at Treasury.
You're obsessed with this.
I'm not obsessed. I just want to know what the hell he's doing.
Look at what the actual issue is here.
So again, I just wanted to play that in its entirety because there's so much to unpack. And again, note that, Scott Jennings is quick to heckle and interrupt, but when Bakari Sellers pointed out that Scott Jennings didn't have shit to say when Republican attorneys general during the Biden administration did everything in their power to stymie President Biden's agenda, Scott Jennings was silent. As a matter of fact, Scott Jennings wasn't silent. He actively cheered it on. He thought it was good when conservative district judges and conservative attorneys general did everything in their power to block the president's agenda. That's good, because apparently it's okay for Republicans to do that and for Republicans to avail themselves of such legal recourse. But Democrat attorneys general and liberal judges, or even conservative judges, as was pointed out by Abby Phillip, that actually a substantial portion, if not a majority, of the judges striking down and blocking Donald Trump's rapacious authoritarianism are actually principled conservatives from the Reagan and Bush era. So again, he's just full of shit. He's lied. He just flat out lied that the people blocking Trump are liberals. They're very often conservative. They're just principled conservatives, unlike Scott Jennings, right? And they recognize that Donald Trump is not adhering to a principled conservative legal jurisprudence, right? He's an authoritarian. He's a right-wing populist. True principled conservatives would actually oppose such things, but of course, As is the case with Scott Jennings and so many other Republicans out there, they just bent the knee for the sake of political expedience. So he was just wrong every which way. He was wrong in terms of the standard because, again, he creates a double standard, which only benefits Republicans, and stunned into silence there. He knew. And Scott Jennings isn't stupid. Scott Jennings is pretty slick. There's a reason the CNN brings him on. He's very smart. He's not particularly principled. He's incredibly dishonest, but he's not stupid. He just recognized he had no counter argument to what Bakari Sellers was pointing out. Like, shit, yeah, I did create a double standard here. But he's happy about the double standard. He wants the double standard. He thinks that that's how the judicial system should work, in which only Democratic administrations are subject to judicial review and judicial, constraints, not Republicans. And again, conservative attorneys general are given a blank check to go after Democratic administrations. So all of this comes on, the heels of, there's an Axios report before I play this next clip. Talking about the test of Trump's power on fast track to the Supreme Court. Legal challenges to Trump administration actions. So federal workforce, immigration, trans rights, government funding and assistance, every one of Donald Trump's most sweeping executive orders is now being challenged in court by multiple lawsuits. They're setting the stage for an historic Supreme Court showdowns that could test Trump's push to remake the federal government and increase his power. They also provide roadmaps on how to stop him. Less than 4 weeks into Trump's term, the Justice Department is already defending signature parts of his agenda in more than 50 lawsuits. Judges have temporarily stopped several of his top priorities from taking effect, at least for now. But in many cases, the White House is purposely pushing its legal limits, inviting this tsunami of legal challenges, signaling the administration's confidence that the conservative-led Supreme Court will back Trump when the time comes. And folks, that is indeed the risk. So even as Trump loses in the short term at the hands of lower court judges, even conservative lower court judges, the idea is that he is hoping to do a Hail Mary in front of the United States Supreme Court, which is under a 6-3 conservative supermajority, 3 of whom were appointed by Donald Trump himself in his first term. And as somebody who doesn't consider the Supreme Court particularly principled or particularly consistent, this is indeed the worry. This is a worry. Trump is at the apex of his power. He's far more powerful and far more dangerous than he ever was during his first term because he has purged so much of the meaningful resistance from his own party. Those who have remained have capitulated. We see this even with Republican senators, even as we speak, bending the knee and confirming his most outlandish, his most ridiculous, his most authoritarian, his most unqualified cabinet nominees. And he also has the benefit of presidential immunity as well. So he is at the apex of his power. It doesn't seem likely that the Supreme Court will meaningfully resist that, even though, to be fair, they did provide some resistance to Trump in the past and ruled against him during his first term. But the immunity decision, as far as I'm concerned, upended all of that. There's no reason to trust this Supreme Court. I want to play one last clip from this panel, though, and it doesn't feature Scott so much as it does another conservative commentator who I believe was on Piers Morgan a few times, Emily Austin.
No,
Go ahead,
it's just,
Emily.
what's the point of the election if all they're going to do is try to disrupt, break the momentum of every single thing that we voted for him to do? Let's be honest with ourselves. We'd be lying to all of our viewers if we are going to sit here and pretend that a lot of these judges are opening cases on the silliest things, from Trump deciding to take, a sex change page off the website, or they're trying to block the Treasury's access to data, or the silliest things just to break
There's
up the
nothing
momentum.
silly about blocking that data. That data
Why
is
shouldn't they have
absolutely
access for
sacred.
auditing?
I mean, how important it is.
government?
Yeah, to the government and to every
they need the
American
access to
citizen
it.
who's got their information in there, social security numbers, their tax numbers. That stuff is sacrosanct. And you've got people going in there
these are
who don't know anything about that system.
So again, this is such a good point. This idea that winning an election gives you a blank check to do whatever the hell you want. By that logic, conservatives should have shut up and bent the knee and gotten out of the way during the 4 years of the Biden administration. Emily and Scott had an obligation to say, yes, sir, Mr. President, whatever you want, because you won the popular vote, not just with a plurality, but a majority. You won the Electoral College, you won the House, you won the Senate. So that's what you should have done by your own principle. But you didn't do that. You objected. You complained. You cheered on. You celebrated legal challenges to the Biden administration. You delighted in the legal defeats of the Biden administration along the way. So again, what it comes down to is they're hypocrites, and they want to shame you into saying, hey, listen, if and when we win elections, you have an obligation to get out of the way or to assist us. But when liberals, progressives, Democrats win elections, we have every right to challenge, to stymie, to obstruct to the best of our ability. They fuel themselves, they animate themselves on hypocrisy and double standards, and they're trying to pressure you into grading them on a curve. And you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. You should say, no, we're going to play by the same rules, whether you like it or not. So think very carefully about what standard you want to create. That's the sort of energy and posture that not just elected Democrats, but also the Democratic surrogates should bring to the table for these conversations. But we'll see what happens. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.